Now, as a manga creator, one thing I do all the time is talk a lot about manga series. And while of course that is pretty standard for a manga channel, one thing I rarely ever talk about is the manga creators themselves. So I decided to just say screw it, I'm gonna make a whole video talking about my favorite manga creators at length. Today we're doing my top 10 favorite mangaka of all time. Now you guys know I have a lot of manga. I read even more manga than I own, so there were so many people to choose from that could have easily gone on this list, but having to narrow it down to only 10 was perfectly so. Again, these are just my opinions. I love so many manga creators I couldn't fit on this list, but these top 10 are just my personal favorites. Now before we get to the first mangaka at the number 10 spot, I kind of wanted to give my thought process for giving these rankings. First being quality of output and consistency of high quality output. You could have an amazing series and then 5 terrible series, and if that were the case, you probably wouldn't make the list. I also contemplated number of series, which is why Eiichiro Oda is actually not on this list. Spoiler alert. If he's your favorite or in your top 10, I'm not arguing that whatsoever, but just having only one series I've been working on forever kind of makes it hard for me to compare to all these other manga who have extensive catalogs. And obviously, I'm also examining individual characteristics of a manga series such as artwork, characters, story, you guys get it, the basics. With all that being said, these again are my top 10 mangaka of all time. Let's get into the number 10 spot. And honestly, we're starting off this list with a very controversial pick. I'm sure most of you guys would have way higher, probably like top 3. But at my number 10 spot, I have the one, the only Kentaro Miura. Obviously, Miura is a legendary mangaka who created one of the greatest manga series of all time, Berserk. And while I don't think Berserk is a perfect series, I think the last couple arcs, or I mean the most recent few arcs with Fantasia and Falcon and the Millennium, I think those are a little bit weaker and drag down the series as a whole. But what Miura was able to do with the Golden Age and Conviction arc is just unheard of. It's my personal favorite, piece of manga literature of all time. The Golden Age arc is just absolutely perfect. Everything from the characters to the story, it's all amazing. And I do think that Guts and Griffith are some of the best characters in all of manga, and their protagonist-antagonist dynamic in Berserk is probably the best dynamic between two characters in any manga series ever. Not to mention the absolutely breathtaking artwork that Miura brings to life in Berserk. Obviously, these iconic panels of dragons, these fantasy landscapes. It's gritty, it's detailed, it's beautiful, and it matches the fantasy atmosphere of the story Berserk absolutely perfectly. Now, the reason he's not higher up on this list is kind of similar to Oda not being on this list. He only really has one series and a few one-shots, and I actually really liked King of Wolves, and Japan was good, but it's just kind of that, only having one real series is why I can't really put him higher up on this list. But honestly, as I've been talking about him more throughout this little segment of his, you could easily put him anywhere in the top, 10 to 5 on my list interchangeably, and I really wouldn't complain. An absolutely brilliant creator. So tragic that he passed away, a couple of years ago. And I just hope they're able to do justice to one of the greatest manga series of all time by one of the greatest manga creators to ever live. Now, coming in at the number 9 spot, we actually have the only female mangaka on this list. And don't get me wrong, there are so many amazing female manga out there, Arakawa, Clamp, the list goes on and on. But this particular manga I've just read the most from and has so many qualities to their manga series that just resonate with me so much, I think are magnificent. My 9th favorite manga of all time is none other than Keiaro Mori, the author of A Bride Story, Emma, Shirley, Anything and Something. I think those are her only series, at least in English, and I've read every last one of them. But what I really enjoy about Keiaro Mori's manga, drama aspects in series, especially like Emma and A Bride's Story. She just has such a happy aura about her series, whether it being about love or friendship or what have you. It just is a feel-good read every time you pick up one of her volumes. And you can tell that Mori creates her art with passion. She does so much research, getting all these little details when she's creating an environment, whether it be the Victorian era of Emma or obviously the Bride Story setting. I forget exactly which culture or country it takes place in, but she writes all these notes in the volumes about, she does all this research to get everything perfect so it's accurate, and it really helps the world building so much. Keiara Mori's art style is also fantastic. The way she's able to draw the female body is amazing. She has these great drawings. I urge you to go check them out. Just her way of drawing the human form, especially female bodies, is just beyond belief. As well as her super detailed artwork, especially in A Bride's Story when she's drawing different patterns and materials. It is super detailed, and honestly, I don't think anybody else could replicate this art style if they tried. But my favorite thing about Keiara Mori's manga is the characters, especially in A Bride's Story. I love all of them. They're just so fun and lovable, and she really writes them in a way that really has you getting attached to them as the series goes on, eagerly waiting to pick up that next volume to see what happens to the characters that you love so much. So Keiara Mori, amazing mangaka, super underrated. Definitely go check out her work. You will not regret it. Now, coming in at the number 8 spot is a mangaka that I really struggled to place just because they don't have a whole lot of content out, but the content that they do have is just on another level. At number 8, I have Hiroki Endo. Now, Endo is probably the least known mangaka on this list. Even his greatest claim to fame, Eden's Endless World, is by no means a super popular series, but I'll be damned if it is not one of the greatest sci-fi manga masterpieces ever created. Just everything about it, the world, the characters, the emotional moments is there, and it's just such a shame that more people aren't able to read the series physically as it is extremely out of print. I think what makes Hiroki Endo stand out in my mind when I think of the greatest mangakas of all time is his art and the way he draws action, specifically action in Eden's Endless World. I have never seen anyone draw action sequences so fluidly and comprehensively like he has. When you're reading down the page, watching this action and combat happen, it is absolutely seamless. It's like you're watching something actually be animated. It just defies all belief, especially when you read so much manga. You see, action scenes that are really choppy as they go from panel to panel. That is not the case with Hiroki Endo's manga. It is so fluid. And the other thing that I think really sets Endo apart from the rest of the pack is his ability to write and execute high impact moments. Now, if you've read Eden's Endless World, especially certain volumes like volume 3 and volume 14, then you'll know that there are these moments that will just have your jaw on the floor. I know they definitely did for me. And as I think about all the manga that I've read over the years, there are not actually a whole lot of series that have had me as in awe as Endo has been able to do. Endo also has a short story collection comprised into 2 volumes put out by Dark Horse called Tan Penshu, which I also gave a 9 out of 10. Just fantastic, super human and down-to-earth feeling. I would highly recommend reading that as well. Again, I kind of struggled placing him because he only really has 2 big series that I have read, so I'm putting him into 8. I feel alright about it, but you could definitely go up or down depending on my mood. Coming in at number 7 might be another controversial one. Whether you think he should be higher or whether you think he should be way lower, especially below Mura, is up for a debate. Leave your thoughts in the comments. But at my number 7 spot, I have Inio Asano. Inio Asano, one of the most popular manga in the West, which is crazy because I don't think a single one of his manga has an anime adaptation, but he just has so many fans around the world too. And what I will say about Asano is that no, he doesn't really have the drastic range that some of these other manga on their list may have, but what he is good at, he is really good at. That, of course, is more of these series with, edgy, angst, dark emotions. It's like Downfall, Goodnight Pun Pun, Girl on the Shore we won't talk about. But the fact that he's able to create these series time and time again and still make them vastly different and memorable for their own reasons is truly something to commend. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention his extremely fleshed out catalog. We don't even have everything he's ever written in English, and what we do have in English is a fantastic catalog of some of the most popular series of all time, and I think they're almost all amazing. It's because of his extensive catalog and consistently great output that I have him so high on the list. Again, you could take him up or down a few pegs, it's your own opinion, but personally, I feel pretty good about having him at number 7. I also have a video ranking each individual Inio Asano manga in English, so if you're interested in learning more about my thoughts on each of his specific series, definitely check that video out. Alright, moving on to the number 6 spot, we have another manga that I really struggled to place just because they don't have a lot of content out. The manga that they have had published is some of the best manga you can read. The manga in question at the number 6 spot is Makoto Yukimura, the mangaka behind such amazing series as Planetes and of course Vinland Saga. Now when I think about Makoto Yukimura, there isn't exactly one thing that really comes to mind immediately, like what is his greatest asset? And while that may seem like a negative at first, I think that being all around amazing at every everything you do is definitely a strong positive. First off, his artwork is spectacular. Just the way he's able to draw these landscapes, different, varieties in Vinland Saga, as well as the action in Vinland Saga, as well as the dark, endless solitude of Planetes is so good. The characters he writes are also some of the greatest I think you can read in manga. Especially like Faye from Planetes, one of the greatest female manga characters of all time. Thorfinn in Vinland Saga is also debatably one of the best written manga characters, ever created. His character arc and development throughout these, decades that he does is so evident, getting all these details correct, really showing a genuine interest and, desire to do right by the time period and for the characters is really commendable. And I think that really elevates his series to a whole other level. And similar to Hiroki Endo, if he had more manga series, I guarantee he'd be higher on this list. But as for now, we only really have 2 manga series from him, so I think that a solid 6th placement is perfect for Makoto Yukimura, and I can't wait to see what he creates in the future. Alright, so now we're at the number 5 spot, and I think this will also be a kind of controversial pick, but we're just gonna rip it off like a band-aid. Number 5 is Hiroyo Oku. Now, some people either hate Hiroyo Oku or love Hiroyo Oku. I'm personally in the latter camp, but I want to preface this section by saying Hiroyo Oku's manga is not going to be for everyone. It is extremely explicit, sexual, crazy, and just all sorts of adjectives. But it's for these reasons that there is no other mangaka who can create such a fun joyride of a manga series like he can. Obviously, when you mention Oku, the series that comes to mind is Gantz. And if you didn't know, Gantz is my personal favorite manga of all time, for the pure fact that when I was reading it, I was just so addicted to the joyride that is Gantz. It's so crazy, you never know what's gonna happen next. And the creativity of every single aspect of Gantz, it just oozes through the pages. It's fantastic. I truly don't think there's any manga creator alive who is so bold and, just willing to do whatever they want as Hiroyo Oku, and I think his series are truly unique in that way. Now, besides Gantz, we also have Inuyashiki, which is a fantastic manga. I read it all in one night. Similar to Gantz, it's just so fast, so fun, you can't help but put it down. And Gigant is in a similar camp as Inuyashiki. While not quite as good or high quality as Inuyashiki or Gantz, I still think it's a really good manga series, and I think it's a really solid addition in his catalog that is probably one of the most out there in all of manga. Now, coming in at number 4, we have a true classic manga. He has created some of the most beloved thriller manga of all time, the master of suspense. Of course, I'm talking about Naoki Urasawa. Urasawa is just a cut above the rest for so many reasons. First off, his art is unlike anybody else. When you see his character designs, you know it's Urasawa. It's personally super nostalgic for me. It's almost drawn like a cartoon comic in a newspaper. I don't know really how to describe it, but his art is amazing. But obviously the thing that Urasawa does best is creating suspense in his thriller series. Series such as Monster, 20th Century Boys, and Pluto, just absolute titans in the seinen demographic, and it's because of his suspense. The way he always keeps you guessing, not knowing what's going to happen next, and then resolving the suspense in a way that just has your jaw on the floor. Truly doing it like nobody else. And I think one thing that really aids the effectiveness of his suspense is writing these characters brilliantly in a way that you really care about what happens to them. The obvious example being Dr. Tenma in Monster, one of the best manga protagonists of all time, not to mention Johan and the relationship they have is again similar to Berserk, one of the greatest character relationships in all of manga. But I also have to mention series like 20th Century Boys, where he has Kenji, in my opinion, the greatest manga character of all time, and of course the iconic friend antagonist of that series, always shrouded in mystery, having you wondering who exactly is he as he's teasing you, dropping you hints, and when you find out, it's just mind-blowing. And I also want to mention Pluto, which is one of the only manga series ever. Volume 3 of Astro Boy Yesterday, which is the series with the greatest robot arc, which is actually what Pluto was adapted from. And after reading the original and the adaptation, just my respect for the adaptation went through the roof. How I was able to take, the story from a children's of all time is just amazing. So if you haven't read Pluto, which I think is back in stock, true master of manga. Alright, so we're finally into the top 3 manga creators of all time, in my opinion, but I don't think anyone is going to debate with this manga creator being so high up on the list. If anything, you might argue he's the best of all time, but I think at number 3, it's just fine for this absolute legend, Takehiko Inoue. Takehiko Inoue is the definition of a manga creator who consistently Vagabond, one of the most legendary, iconic, and greatest manga series ever created. Then you have Slam Dunk, his shonen basketball series, my personal favorite series from him, and then Real, his wheelchair basketball manga that's super character-driven. I guess the easiest place to begin with Takehiko Inoue is his artwork. Now, the easiest example is to go straight to Vagabond, so we'll go ahead and do that. Vagabond has probably the best manga artwork ever. I think that is a pretty universal take. Obviously, you know, it's going to be close with some other things, but I think Vagabond is the best manga artwork. It's so realistic. The action is fluid. It's just absolutely beautiful. You could hang any one of these panels in an art museum and it would not be out of place. It is truly a work of art every single page. The artwork in his other series is also amazing, like the basketball action in Real and Slam Dunk is absolutely perfect in my opinion, as well as, you know, his very realistic art style when it comes to drawing characters, specifically in Real. I think that the way he draws characters in that manga specifically really adds to the authenticity of their emotions and the stakes of the entire manga. But besides just the artwork, I think that every single one of his series is just amazing from beginning to end. Obviously, we haven't really seen the end of Vagabond or Real just yet, but there is not a bad arc, there is not a bad chapter in any of this series. And after decades of writing manga, not to have a single bad chapter, I mean, how is that even possible? I honestly don't know how to describe it any further. I mean, he just has an outstanding track record. I don't even know how it's possible to be so consistently amazing, but here we are with 3 stupendous series from Takehiko Inoue, one of the greatest to ever do it, no debate. Alright, so for these final 2 manga, I really struggled. It was like a tug of war inside my brain. Who was going to take number 1? Who was going to take number 2? So I think, honestly, you could flop these 2 around. Maybe a little bit of recency bias with the number 1 spot, as I've been reading a lot of his stuff recently. So at number 2, take this with a grain of salt. It could easily be number 1 tomorrow, but the number 2 spot I have Taiyo Matsumoto. If there is one word to describe Taiyo Matsumoto, it is unique. Basically, everything about his manga series are unlike any other manga you will find. First off, the way he creates the worlds in his manga is absolutely masterclass. Now, his series tend to have more of a, how would I say this, surreal feeling to them. Some of his series, like Go-Go Monster and number 5, almost feel like they're taking place within a dream. Some of them even have dream sequences that just bend your mind. And you also have series like Tekken Kinkreet, where the city just feels so alive yet surreal at the same time. It's just so bizarre, I can't even really put it to words. Also, the way his characters tend to act is super bizarre, especially in series like Go-Go Monster, Tekken Kinkreet, and Sunny. It can be really funny as well, but at the end of the day, I think it always just makes the reading experience so much more interesting and enjoyable. But I think that what makes Taiyo Matsumoto the most unique is his art style, which is not conventional by any means. I mean, when you take a look at his lines, they're not straight. When you take a look at his shading, it tends to just be little scribbles. But to call his artwork bad or sloppy just couldn't be any further from the truth. The artwork that Matsumoto creates when putting pen to paper lends perfectly to the environment of every single series he draws. He can also draw some very dark, you know, these primal action scenes, especially in series like number 5. His landscapes are also super pleasing to look at. He also has an extensive catalog, not only in English, but also things that haven't yet been translated, such as Takemitsu Samurai and Zero. But solely looking at stuff that is in English, you have number 5, one of my top 5 manga series of all time. Series like Ping Pong, I mean, the list goes on and on, just amazing hit after amazing hit. When going through the criteria of how it's going to judge these manga and rank them, Matsumoto really checks every single box, so it's no wonder that he's at number 2 on this list. One of the greatest creative minds in all of manga, and if you haven't read one of his series, I highly recommend you check him out right after this video. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the Prom G's very favorite manga at the number 1 spot. And to say that this mangaka is an absolute legend and one of the most important figures in the history of manga would be an understatement. Of course, I'm talking about the godfather of manga himself, Osamu Tezuka. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, oh my god, this guy is such a snob. He put the godfather of manga at number 1 for his influence and the classics he's made. Yeah, that's part of it. Putting things into context, we would not have manga as a medium if it was not for this man right here. Basically taking Japanese comics from a place where they're only really used for comedic purposes or for government propaganda to a place where you could use them to tell stories with a real... If you look at the series he actually put out, there is so much quality. I know a lot of people overlook Osamu Tezuka's series just for the fact that they're either old or, probably don't hold up to today. Some of his series probably don't hold up as well, but there are so many manga series he's put out that are still grade A by today's standards. I've read many Tezuka series, and I think that he has like over 100, maybe even hundreds of manga series out there. And I mean, the ones I've read are all fantastic. I mean, take Phoenix, the way it's written, the foreshadowing in it, the scope of the series is spectacular. Then you have series like Astro Boy, which was massively influential to series like Dragon Ball with its character tropes. Then you have Message to Adolf, which is a super effective satire, but is also extremely interesting and well written. Has one of the best manga endings of all time, in my top 3 manga of all time. You have series like Otakira Hito, a really close in-depth look at human shortcomings, Apollo Song, Princess Knight, one of the funniest manga I've ever read, Buddha, Blackjack, Dororo, Ayako. I mean, the list goes on and on. He has so many classics that you are doing yourself a disservice by not checking out if you haven't already. Some people will tell you that Tezuka series are more of slow burns, and there are some that I think I felt this way, but there are others where I was just so compelled by the way he writes his stories that I just could not put these books down. They were that interesting. And the themes that he writes about in his stories, especially those regarding, the human condition and human nature, are so interesting and done in a way that's basically manga is truly incredible. It's what every manga to follow has strived to replicate, and nobody has done it like Tezuka ever since him. So yes, call me an old head, call me a snob, call me pretentious, whatever you want. Osamu Tezuka, in my opinion, is the greatest manga of all time. Someone who I still think is a little bit underrated in today's current manga landscape. His classics are still worth checking out to this day, and I beg you, if you have not already, to go and check out Osamu Tezuka's wide catalog of amazing manga for yourself. I guarantee you'll find something you love. But anyways, that is going to do it for my top 10 favorite manga of all time list. Hopefully these placements didn't piss anybody off too much. I know there'll be some controversy and discrepancy down in the comments below, but I'm all here for it. Leave your top 10 manga down in the comments below as well. Who's your favorite? Did we disagree? Did we agree on anything? Let me know. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and are leaving with some new manga series or manga creators to check out, because all of them are absolutely fantastic. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more manga videos just like this. So yeah, this has been the Prom G. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and as always, hope to catch you in the next one.